you're back on. All right, this is Brent Raynes for Alternate Perceptions Online magazine, and I have a returning guest tonight. Actually, it's 9 o'clock, Saturday, the 19th of January here, and it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Australia, where my guest Tony Healy is located. Now, how about that? Yeah, when you talk to people in Australia, it's not the same thing as just someone in another state nearby. But you know, we had a fascinating discussion the last time, 6 years ago, believe it or not, and it was how fast time flies. We're talking about that. Anyway, what I can tell you at this point, I'm going to kind of repeat from the last issue, and I'm sure there's going to be more. But since 1969, our guest has been investigating a wide range of unexplained phenomena. Every state and territory of Australia, you'll correct me if I say anything wrong here, and in fact, many other countries. In fact, we've talked about people in this country that he came over and well, anyway, we'll get all into all that. Since early 1980s, he's collaborated with Paul Cropper on many projects, co-authored Out of the Shadows, Mystery Animals of Australia from back in 1994, the Yowie, which is their version of what we call Bigfoot or the Hairy Ape, 2006, and Australian Poltergeist, 2015. So you can see we're covering some wide range of things here. And during our 2018 interview, I know that Tony said he was hoping to compile his book of different things he's been involved with. He was going to call it Monster Safari. And also he was working on the Yowie File. How's the progress on that, Tony?
That's all wrapped at long last, Brent. Hey, great to see you, by the way.
Great to see you too.
In fact, if you just bear with me, I'll grab a copy and hold it up to the screen.
Okay, sure thing.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's.
Yeah, that's the Yowie File.
And that looks like, hairy ape or one of our Bigfoots. But it's the Yowie in Australia. Wow.
Looks we're very happy with the cover. Pretty spooky. It looks like the big guy's just about to jump out of the picture and rip your arm off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Got that nasty look in his eye.
Wow. Yeah.
But anyway, we're very happy with it. Note all the tags here.
So is that by yourself and your associate Paul Cropper?
Yeah, Paul Cropper and I. It took us an awful long time to put it together because we both kept getting sidetracked by other projects. But we're very happy with it. It came out late last year. But there's 271 additional Yowie reports in there to augment the 300 odd reports in our 2006 book. So
awesome.
I'm pretty happy.
And how about the Monster Safari with your global travels?
Well, yeah, that's I make little tiny steps forward with that, and then something intrudes. I've been actually busy completing a what you call it, a book for not a children's book, a book for younger readers. It's a novel, but that's based partly on my own adventures and partly on the tall stories told by my great uncle Jerry when I was a kid. And I'm really happy with that. I'll be sending that off to publishers early this year, for that read middle of this year. But I've had some encouraging feedback about that. But as for Monster Safari, the memoir, that's largely it's largely written, but it just needs a huge edit. And I do a bit, and you know how it is, get sidetracked. I might live long enough to, get it done.
Yeah. Well, I know the last time we talked on the, you had spent months here in the United States, and you ended up telling about meeting a couple of old friends of mine, Dwayne and Ramona Hebner.
Yes.
Who we talked about, because I had known them, and particularly Ramona, because I met her back in '73 before she got involved with cryptid or Bigfoot, investigations. And Brooksville, Florida was a real hot spot for UFOs and Bigfoot. I mean, she even had reports of winged creatures and a kind of reptilian thing that had been seen. There was just, plus their own personal experiences. It seems like some people are prone to these experiences, draw them in, whereas people like myself, they usually avoid.
Yeah, me too. Fortunately.
Well, it's I'd like to see it, maybe through the car window or at a distance where I felt safe.
Exactly.
Not 5 feet away like some people drive.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really, really awesome. And I know we talked about synchronicity and how sometimes the most surprising things happen, to you, and as you're investigating, and you have this string of synchronistic good luck events, that for you to kind of pay attention to. I guess sometimes some people choose not to. Yeah, it's just a coincidence, but whatever the case. And then poltergeist phenomenon, and I know you were talking about a case you had actually, you and Paul had actually investigated and witnessed objects coming through the ceiling and flying across the room, and all of high strangeness stuff there. You didn't miss out on that. That's for sure.
No, that was one occasion where the phenomenon formed for us right on cue. It was, mind-boggling. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would be in what book?
Australian Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. I know it sounded quite fascinating, and I remember one time there was a newspaper reporter, and there was the one woman who was usually there with her small child, and she was reading a newspaper, and there was a little table in front of her, and this metallic plug or something had fallen, just appeared there and fallen on the table.
Yes. Yeah.
You witnessed that, and so did the reporter, and anyway, very, very interesting. And then also you'd hear somebody would hear something hit the roof of the house, and then next thing you knew, it coming through the ceiling, but not breaking anything, not breaking the roof. It was like it's on the other side.
Yes. The phenomena that occurred was sort of textbook poltergeist stuff. If you read poltergeist cases going back centuries, these different phenomena are reported. Stones just appearing to fall through the ceiling or the roof, falling all over you. Strange, creepy writing on walls, great thumps on walls, dangerous objects like knives and broken glass flying around willy-nilly, but never hurting anyone. But just as well, I had a knife like that close to my shoulder on one occasion, and broken glass showered down a couple of times. So the poltergeist business was pretty interesting, and there is a kind of an overlap in some cases to cryptozoological events. There's one case in the Yowie File where there was in 1946 out in Western New South Wales, an abandoned farmhouse was in the process of being renovated by a man and his family, and there were great big heavy footfalls in the ceiling, thump, 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 with dust coming down. And they thought, what the hell? They got up on a ladder, looked in the loft. There was nothing there. And then they started to, this big gorilla-like thing started to appear around the house, invaded the house twice, grabbed the wife by the neck on one occasion, and was trying to drag her out of the house. The husband made a commotion and it dropped the wife. And then later on there was poltergeist phenomena inside an adjoining or a shed, and showers of stones like a hailstorm falling on the roof of the main homestead. So it was very strong poltergeist phenomena and unquestionable Yowie event at the same time. We've had a couple of others where poltergeist phenomena has been mentioned or has occurred during Yowie episodes, but usually not as strong as that. The correlation was undoubtable in that occasion.
Wow. Well, yeah, because now here in, I know back in '75, I visited Stan Gordon. He was having a rash of Bigfoot incidents in the state of Pennsylvania, and there were instances where the high strange was there. In one instance, of course, as you know, in October of '73, there was the widely reported case, which I think everybody's heard now, pretty much in the field, is when this object landed, spherical object in a field, and there were multiple witnesses to it, and so there were some people that approached it, and two Bigfoots were seen, and one man fired fired at them, and they screamed, and then I guess there was a state trooper came. I think he witnessed some of the activity, but anyway, Stan Gordon can tell that story, and others, even with a Bigfoot seen carrying some sort of a globe in its
yes, yeah,
and it's and I recently was in touch with someone who is he was a young boy there, and he was with some of the people from Stan Gordon's group who I have actually met years ago, and said that a Bigfoot, two Bigfoots appeared, and as they watched it, they were running away, and they shined flashlights at it, and they just sort of became transparent, and then they just disappeared.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah, that's high strange there. That guy is now an adult, lives out in Sedona, is investigating the Bradshaw Ranch, and he's no stranger now to all sorts of high strangeness. I've recently, got some stories from him that I've posted in my my online magazine, Alternate Perceptions, which I can send you links to.
Yeah, please do. Right?
Fascinating stuff. He and his fiance have observed a lot of things. They've been studying Bradshaw Ranch for about 11 years now. Goes there once or twice a week, and have had multiple experiences.
Yeah, jeez, he's a brave man. That'd be a spooky environment.
Yeah, he's worked with Tom Dongo, who has written several books about Sedona and all the things going on there. And I don't know. It's just one of those locations that seems to be what John Keel called a window. Where higher than average or normal activity occurs. And I'm sure you got those places in Australia too. There.
Yes, I don't think we've got anything that quite compares to the Skinwalker Ranch, is what they normally call that place, isn't it? Is that
in
Bradshaw
Utah?
Ranch? Yeah. We've got some certainly high strangeness places, but nothing quite like that. Nothing has lasted so long. We've had intense episodes that have gone on, UFOs, floating lights, Yowies, Poltergeist, Black Panthers is a frequent guest in these window areas here.
Oh
But
yeah,
nothing quite like, yeah.
Yeah. How about one thing like that I remember when I first met you know
Ramona.
Joshua Cutchin. Well, I'm going to talk about Joshua Cutchin and Tim Renner at the Strange Realities Conference in 2019. And before they came out with a book, Where the Footprints End, Volume 1. And they had a Volume 2 that came out later, but all these anomalous things associated with Bigfoot. But it was Volume 1 where they, and at the conference they talked about, and that was what really I zoomed in on, all these cases with Bigfoot they had and women in white, ladies in white that would appear. I remember searching my memory. Okay, yeah, that sounds familiar. Ramona herself had an experience when she was young. Her mother, she was, I guess, probably back in Tennessee. She was laying on a couch. She was, as I recall, pregnant, and she was just laying there, and she sensed that someone was standing by her, and she says, "Yes, Mom, what is it?" And the mom says, "What are you saying?" And she was in another room, and she opened her eyes, and there was this woman dressed in, a white gown standing nearby. Then she wasn't there, and but it's figured in. Tim Renner found a lot of cases involving that with in Pennsylvania and in Maryland that he was investigating, where these apparitions were seen around places where Bigfoot had been seen, and and so I started digging. I found cases too, more and more as I dug into it. But sometimes you just need to have an area to focus on. You think, oh, you wouldn't even think anything of it, and then it's like, oh yeah, I ended up. There was a case in my files. A gentleman from Massachusetts sent me of an abductee who said he was walking up the stairs to his apartment. There was a woman in white appeared, like in a gown. And next thing he knew, he was back outside and couldn't figure out what happened. And this was one of his of many unusual, experiences as an abductee. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that in case that rang any bells with you from your perspective.
It does. It does. By the way, those two books by Mr. Cutchin and Timothy Renner, they're fantastic. I agree. I thought these guys really on the wall because they agree with me. they corroborate to a degree what I've been saying for years. But no, they're very, very good. They've done an awful lot of deep research there, and it's very, very impressive. I take my hat off to them.
But, and the ecology of the soul is very extensive too. I mean, it's a huge volume.
I'm looking forward to that one. I'll send away for that in the next couple of days. But as for the women in white, actually, I read both of the Where the Footprints End books about a year ago now. I forgot about the woman in white, but certainly there are many of our Yowie witnesses who, when you sort of draw them out a little bit, turns out they've seen ghosts, and not necessarily women in white. It's remarkable how many of them have had psychic experiences of one kind or another. So there's let me see. Well, you mentioned strange coincidences earlier. Would you like to hear my latest example of strange coincidences?
Sure, by all means. Absolutely.
Okay. I guess you've heard of Dean Harrison, who runs Australian Yowie Research. He's
no.
Oh, gee, well, he's number one in the Yowie field here. He and his team got some infrared images actually of Yowies, hot probably a bit pointless trying to. You see that there's a couple of these were thermal images, rather thermal images. The two of Dean's friends.
Two
there.
Investigators on the right,
Yeah,
and then the image.
And they're superimposed on a shot of a Yowie that was taken earlier. But anyway, that's all described in this book. But yeah, Dean has been a colleague of ours for years and years, and has been very generous with a lot of the reports that come into his site, Australian Yowie Research. Anyway, Dean was coming down here to Canberra. He lives in the Gold Coast, southeast Queensland. He came down here before Christmas, I think in late November, to just catch up. And I thought, right, I better take him to a Yowie site around here. Although this isn't really a great hotspot. We've had Yowie reports back in the colonial era and all the way through, but not to the extent of some areas like the Blue Mountains and the Gold Coast hinterland. But anyway, I thought, oh yeah, I'll take Dean out to a place called Tamers Bridge, which is a bridge over the Murrumbidgee River, not far from a town called Yass. There was a fellow was stopped by a Yowie in the middle of that bridge in 1987. This great big thing the size of a grizzly bear climbed over the bridge and stood in front of him. It was dripping wet, and stared through the windscreen at him with these red eyes. And he said, he told Paul Cropper, who interviewed him, I thought I was going to die. I was sure I was going to die. But the thing backed off, turned around, ran across the bridge and up a ravine on the other side. So I was interested in that because an old Aboriginal man told a couple of friends of his in 1903 that he had seen a Yowie killed by Aboriginal warriors just downstream from there, way back in around 1847, when he was just a boy. He said they killed it. There was a great mob of Aboriginal warriors, killed it with clubs and dragged it down a hill by its ankles. So that guy was Harry Williams, the Aboriginal fellow. Anyway, so there were, before the fellow got confronted by the huge Yowie on the bridge, I had gone out to that spot because a young man and his friends had seen a Black Panther at that spot. So again, the Black Panther Yowie connection. I mean, this was just a few meters away. The Black Panther was on one slope, one bank of the creek, a river, the Yowie on the bridge. Since then, Paul Cropper has dug up a story of a Yowie, shaggy Yowie-like entity in the river at that spot in 1860, I think 65. So it's a hot spot. So I thought, well, I'll take Dean out there. So I thought I better reconnoitre the road because there's been a bit of storm damage to the roads. So I just carefully drove out there and got to the bridge, took a few photographs and climbed up this ravine where the Yowie had retreated to and looked back down, and very little traffic on that road, hardly any. Yeah. And I looked down and one car stopped, and I thought, well, I thought I'll just walk down and I'll see why this guy has stopped. He was looking at the bridge. I think he was taking a couple of photographs. So I walked down. There's this old guy, about 5 years younger than me, and I said, hey. I said, are you interested in the bridge for any particular reason? And he said, no, it's just that I've driven over this bridge for years and I've never stopped. So that was fortuitous that he stopped. And I said, well, I'm here because a man was confronted by a huge big yowie right in the middle of the bridge a few years ago. And the guy said, oh, my son's got one of those on his property right now. So nice coincidence. I said, where's
Yeah.
the property? And he said, just a half hour up the road at a place called Wee Jasper. Anyway, I thought, wow, this is great. So I got the details, and he said, yeah, there's footprints and everything. He said, I've seen the footprints, and my son has photographed it all. The son's wife saw the yowie, or a yowie, and then the fellow who was renting a cottage off this family got really close, had one approach. He was in a shower block, having a shower. Something kept thumping the walls and throwing things on the tin roof, and he went out, and there was a great big 8-foot tall creature behind his car, and it walked away. He put his pants on, jumped in his car and followed it slowly. And the thing, he had it, turned the lights on. The thing stood behind a tree, got a pretty good look at it. Then it turned, ran towards a fence, leaving these great big footprints, hurtled over the fence and away. So since I've interviewed him and the son whose wife saw the yowie. So this was a nice fortuitous coincidence, right? It was the first time I'd been up to Tamers Bridge in 20 years. And the only guy who stops on the bridge has a son who has an ongoing yowie event at his property. So that was just before Christmas. As it turned out, I didn't have time to take Dean up there, Dean Harrison. But now that the Christmas holidays have just about finished, here in Australia, the school kids and their families have 6 weeks, the equivalent of the summer holidays in the States. That runs from just before Christmas through to the end of January. So there'd be too many people poking around up there at Wee Jasper. I've arranged to go back up to the site with the prime witness in a couple of weeks' time. But that Wee Jasper, in 1930, the local police were excited because they said a couple of lions had been hanging around the village. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing is that Paul Cropper and I interviewed 3 guys who'd been tracked or shadowed by a yowie just outside of Wee Jasper in the late 1990s. So the area's a hotspot of yowie and big cat events. So, and more. I won't go into any more detail, but so that was, I think, just very fortuitous coincidence that I happened to be there at the time. Yeah.
Wow. Is that all in your latest book there, or is that
some of the one where the fellow was confronted by the creature on the bridge? Yes, that's in it, and the one where the 3 men were shadowed or followed by the yowie to the south, just south of Wee Jasper, is also in our 2006 book. That particular incident, the 3 men were shadowed by the yowie. One guy got very close with a flashlight and got a good look at it. There were 2 Caucasian men and an Aboriginal friend of theirs. The presence of the Aboriginal man may have been significant, I don't know, but our main informant, one of the white guys, said he was one of our few witnesses back 30, 20 years ago who strongly suspected the episode was paranormal. You know, most people say, well, it must be real, because, you know, we saw it, it left footprints. But he said, no, I think it's got to be paranormal, because me and the other white guy had a similar experience way up in Queensland, only a couple of years earlier. They'd been followed by a couple of Yowies on coming down at dusk from Mount Warning, which is a Yowie hotspot. He said, how on earth would the same thing have happened to us up there and then down here? And these guys are scientists, they're herpetologists, not that, you know, I suppose it'd be more impressive if they were zoologists who specialised in study of gorillas, but nevertheless, they're intelligent guys. So, right. Yeah, anyway, I'll be going up to Jasper, yeah, awesome. Shortly.
Yeah, yeah, when I was talking with Joshua Cutchin just the other night, doing an interview with him, we talked about a case that's in the volume 1 of his and Tim Renner's book, Where the Footprints End. And it was about a case in Ohio where there was a Bigfoot, and then it was throwing rocks down from, I think, a hill at these witnesses. And then they I think marked
you got a Black Panther thing.
and then there was well, you know, might want to consult the book, but as I recall, it was they marked the rocks, threw them up, and then they came back, the same ones that they had marked. And I said, yeah, that's interesting, because, you know, in my book I wrote back 2019, I had several cases similar. You know, my book was John A. Keel, The Man, the Myths, and the Ongoing Mysteries. And there was a Tim Swartz, a well-known person in the UFO field from Indiana, and he told me that he one time worked at a TV station in Dayton, Ohio, and they didn't want to really cover the story, but they said, we got a call from someone with poltergeist activity in their home. So he went there, and he witnessed these stones falling from the ceiling. You know, they seemed like they just appeared just below the ceiling and fell there. He got the idea because Ivan Sanderson had claimed this had happened to him, and he marked these rocks and threw them, and they came back at him. So he did the same thing. He went out where there was a backyard with a fence and a cornfield all around. Said there was no way, you know, I marked these stones and I threw them out there. I went back in and sat down on the sofa, and just like that, they started coming through the ceiling. And there was the stones he'd marked, you know, and said there's no way anyone could have gathered them quick enough, and you know, normally.
Wow. Gee, that didn't even occur to Paul Cropper and I during our Poltergeist episode in the Northern Territory. We could have done that, but since then we've documented what is probably, well, undoubtedly the best Australian poltergeist episode of all, from Mayon up in Western Australia. It went pretty well consistently all the way through from the mid-1950s to the early 1960s. And that exact same thing happened there. People marked stones that fell from the ceiling or just fell out of the sky outside, and you know, put them all over the bush, you know, threw them into the bush. Bloody things came back, you know, the same marked stones. So the things are uncanny. They're like Sasquatches in a way. They're always 2 or 3 steps ahead of us.
Yeah. Have you had the like the footprints? You mentioned footprints a while ago, like some locations, like with Stan Gordon in Pennsylvania, the 3-toed prints. Have you had any of those?
Indeed, yeah. Had 3. Well, Yowie footprints are much fewer and far between compared to Bigfoot tracks. That's one difference in the Australian situation and the Canadian and American situation. Footprints are reported quite frequently, in about maybe 1 in every 8 or 9 incidents. But people have a hell of a time photographing the tracks. I've tried it myself, it's very difficult to photograph imprints. And often the Australian ground is quite hard and dry, usually, compared to North America. So we have relatively few good footprint casts. But yes, some are 5-toed, as you'd expect, and they look pretty much like the Sasquatch tracks. Others are 3-toed, like some of the Stan Gordon ones. And a couple, very almost identical to sketches and pictures of 3-toed tracks from North America. We did comparison images in the Yowie, the 2006 book. We had a whole chapter on footprints or the lack of them. And we have 4-toed tracks, we have 3-toed tracks, 5-toed tracks, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we had an investigator in Indiana, Don Worley. He investigated UFOs and Bigfoot, and I remember there was when I first met him at his home in Cornersville, Indiana, in September of 1975. I called him up from Ohio, said I wanted to meet him. I heard he had a lot of stories, and I rushed over there, and he came out with a pad of paper and started writing my license plate number down. And he said, I got to thinking, he said, you called up and you didn't ask for directions. I said, well, I got a map. And he says, I just want to make sure you're not somebody from the government,
Oh, okay. Getting a bit paranoid.
Yeah, but we sat down and had a good conversation. By the end of it, he says, oh, okay, forget about what just happened earlier. I know you're an enthusiast like me. You're not government. And but it's surprising sometimes how people have assumed that. I visited a police station in Alabama one time where there was it was right about shift change, and all these officers had seen a UFO.
Ooh.
So I wanted to talk to them, and they said, "Oh, well, we're going to assemble them for you out here in this lobby." So I quickly had to fill out a questionnaire form for all of them to fill out, and they did. And then this older guy come up to me and says, "Boy, you guys work fast. What agency do you work for?" Oh, no, that's nothing there. But anyway, with Don Worley, he had quite an assembly of Bigfoot reports from that area, and he had this fascinating story about an area where there were strange UFOs, balls of light, and such, and a ghost woman. And he and a nephew of his sat in the car one night, didn't expect anything to happen, In fact, he was playing a recording of some witness, that for his nephew to listen to. And they actually saw the apparition of this woman walk by the car. And he even wrote up an article on it in Fate magazine. And so he told me the story, and I thought, wow. And there was so many witnesses to this thing. I mean, I guess about a half a dozen people had come forward. But it was, but he had all kinds of cases of Bigfoot and aliens, and at times it was just too much. It's like, what do you do with all this? Even some of it was, like MIB, Men in Black type stuff.
Oh wow!
And, I don't know if you've had any of that in your neck of the woods.
No, but I just remembered a ghost woman sighting from New Zealand, actually. A sighting by a fellow and his mate, his friend, who had seen a hairy ape man not long before. That was in the North Island, and I may have even touched on this last time we spoke. I got in touch with him through a quite freaky coincidence, but I'll perhaps get back to that. Yeah, he and his friends had seen on numerous occasions these spook lights, blue lights, floating around in the area where finally on one night this hairy ape man came and approached them, scared them away. At around that time, or just a little later, I think, they were going to another place to same general area to see the blue lights, and they saw a woman in white. Yes, young woman. She looked like he said dressed like someone like Little Bo Peep out of a fairy tale book. Only she was an adult, but she had a bonnet from the say 19th century, long white dress, and she was holding a shepherd's crook. It's a big sheep country, New Zealand. So, and she was just looking off into the towards the horizon. And I said, "Did you guys approach her, or what?" He said, "Well, we had plenty of time to look at her, but no, we didn't." And now I forget what they said, whether they turned away and then looked back and she was gone. No doubt something like that. In any case, but yeah, so that was one ghost woman. There was one here in Canberra too. I'm just not entirely sure about this. One middle-aged guy and his fisherman friends strongly suspected that they'd been close to a Yowie out on the Murrumbidgee River. You remember I mentioned the Murrumbidgee River was the one that went under the bridge at Tamus Bridge, where the Yowie had been. Well, this is somewhat upstream, but I thought, they never saw this Yowie. They just heard noises. They disagreed or didn't quite cooperate with each other. I went out with them to this spot, a hell of a place to get into as they were fishing, but I don't know this guy very well. He said he had seen a black panther out there just downstream, and I thought, okay, that ticks one box. So, okay, I'll believe you. He worked out at the military college here in Canberra, and he said he saw a ghostly woman there at 6 a.m. So I forget whether he said she was dressed in white. I think he said seemingly old-fashioned clothes. I don't think they were 19th century, but he thought she was real. But then he thought, what on earth is she doing just standing there beside the road, staring? There's a maze there. This was very early, just on dawn, and he is a what do you call it, security guard out there. And when he got in, he just remarked to his boss and colleagues, "Oh, funny, I saw a woman out there by the maze. I wonder what she's doing out there." And the boss got quite angry and said, "Don't start that ghost business again with us." And he said, What? And he said, yeah, some of you guys have been pulling my leg, saying that they've seen this ghost woman. So he said, "Well, I don't know. She was there." And so yeah, ghostly women, but certainly some of our other, as I said, many actually, of our Yowie witnesses, when you engage them in a lengthy conversation, they'll get around to mentioning that they've had ghostly experiences, not always involving ghost women, but sometimes.
Yeah, and the thing that a lot of people investigating a story fail to do is ask, maybe they saw something in the paper, they find out, oh, you saw a Yowie, or you saw a UFO, or you saw, or you had a poltergeist, and I know, like, Joshua Cutch and Tim Renner, they're going to ask, By the way, have you ever had any other unusual experiences you can't explain?
Yes,
And
yes,
this
that's
is
the way to
jar
do it.
their memories, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. You just sort of, we don't sort of jump on them. Yeah, just to casually ask, oh, by the way, had
yeah,
any other interesting experiences? And often, very often say, yeah. But
yeah,
as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the flesh and blood school investigators don't want to know about that. I remember Ramona Hibner and Dwayne Hibner
mhm,
way back when I met them, saying, yeah, when John Green and Dennis Gates came here, they did a tour of North America. And they said, oh, John was very nice, but he didn't want to know about UFOs or anything else. He'd turn off his tape recorder. Just let's get back to
yeah,
the Bigfoot.
yeah. And it's that's what we're only getting part of the picture. I mean, there's whatever is going on. There's so many instances where there seems to be some connection,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a fellow researcher down here in Miami, Florida. He's sent me a lot of stories. He's collected things from all over the world, thousands of cases of encounters that have come to his attention with and of beings and UFOs. That's what he's
Mm-hmm.
really interested in. And there's thousands of these cases, global. And I wrote to
Mm-hmm.
him and I said, it'd be interesting. We're getting a story from someone of seeing a being and there's a UFO, and then that's it. But that person, what if someone were to, in each of those instances, were to ask, have you had any other unusual experiences during your life?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
certainly a lot of people who are having that kind of experience, that's not the end of it. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times there's the repeater effect. There's other things going on.
Repeater. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that repeater used to be a thing that was like uh, something people didn't want to talk about, because they thought that indicated the person was unreliable because they like with UFOs, if they saw one object and it was a good sighting, fine, but if they started seeing
Mm.
others, well, they're just seeing things because nobody. That's a once in a lifetime experience, right? Now,
Yes,
apparently not.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. We used to have the same feeling in our early days of Yowie research, me and Paul Cropper and others here. We were always interested to hear of a Yowie report, but if the person said, well, actually, I've seen them before, we'd think, oh, God, how unlikely is that? Uh, and so maybe if the different sightings occurred on their same property or in the vicinity, perhaps. But when people started saying, "Yeah, I saw one of those up in northern Queensland and then another one down in southern
Mhm.
Victoria," we used to think, "No way." But now I think, yeah, it's because it may be because that person is psychic. Uh, I think I think that's part of it. I think
Yeah.
these things, well, I don't know, but these phenomena occur sometimes in hotspots. That's a part of the equation. There's something about a particular area that so these things can come through a wormhole or God knows what. And it's partly because of the percipient, if they're at all psychic, they're much more liable to see a Yowie than I am. So there are
Yeah.
other factors
Yeah. I
too.
remember. I remember back when I was a teenager, just entering the field, and there were a couple of adult researchers in my area that trying to guide me along, and we had
Yeah.
this guy come from New Hampshire, another state, visit, and he's staying at this motel, and then he tells us that um, sometime during that time he was at the motel, a UFO visited him, and they were real skeptical. They says, "We've lived here all our lives. We don't just go out. I mean, you just come into our our community, and suddenly you're seeing a UFO. And he
Yeah,
said, well,
yeah.
you got to understand is I had a sighting years ago, a close encounter, and ever since then it's like they're locked onto me. And
Mm,
you know, to them it sounded ridiculous, but I remember, you know, listening to this and thinking, okay, that's interesting, you know, but they were um, they were having trouble comprehending the idea, you know,
yes,
and
yes.
and I remember feeling maybe they're right or maybe they're wrong. I don't know, but you know, that
Mm,
was anyway.
yeah.
It takes
Mm,
time to weed through all that, um, but
indeed, indeed. Yeah,
yeah,
and yeah, and it's true that the water is muddied from time to time by people who appear to be fantasy prone or just
hmm
plain liars. Um, yes, in fact, I won't go into detail, but there's one particular incident in this book where the woman, the witness, came across very convincingly, but we have reason to believe that she was severely fantasy prone. Now we've heard from another person, but could be, and so that happens from time to time. What can you do?
and then
Um,
sometimes maybe they become that way because they did have an initial experience, and now
mhm.
everything is, you know, in their minds Bigfoot or like like Betty Hill. I believe that first experience, her and Barney, you know, and then maybe some others. But then I went out sky watching with her, and I realized she is so into she was so into the UFO thing that she could see a street light or
uh,
a plane and think, oh,
yeah,
I think that's one there, you know, and you
yes,
know,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
and that happened.
yeah,
But then there's some people that seem genuinely connected somehow.
hmm,
They're prone to some kind of anomalous experience. So you just have to study each case individually and see how it plays out. And,
yeah,
you know, but
mm, yes,
try not to
it's
shoot too judgmental. I really, you know, I got to know Betty Hill quite well. And she was a very nice lady. And now I've met Kathleen Marden, her niece. And
mm,
yeah, there's some history there that was really, I think, anomalous. But then there's
mm,
sometimes people go off the deep end, you know, with it, and
yeah,
you,
yeah. Yeah, I guess this is why multiple witness events are so important, you know,
mhm.
and you have more than a single witness. We value those in the Yowie business as well as everything else. Although I did check out a dual witness supposed UFO flap in New Zealand when I was there in 2018, and ended up thinking, oh, these people are really nice people, but they are fantasy prone. They were looking at aeroplane lights and saying, yeah, there goes another one, you know. I just stayed awake just about all night at their place, straining my eyes and didn't see anything. And they were seeing them. They said, "Oh, I can't understand it. You know, didn't you think that was a UFO?" Well, no, it looked, I'm not sure, mate. It looked like more like a
Yeah.
plane to me. And they said, "Oh, gee, every other night that happens here." But there was something about them that this has happened in Yowie hotspots here and Black Panther hotspots here too. These people had both been struck by lightning. Their
Oh,
property seemed to attract lightning. The guy had been thrown several meters and knocked unconscious by one lightning bolt. His wife had been struck in a tent on before just before they bought the property on a nearby beach. She was hanging on to the metal um, pole of the tent, and she got knocked silly as well. She claimed to have been struck their house as well on another occasion. Certainly, she seemed to have burns on her feet, and I was attracted to this story because I'm interested in people who are struck repeatedly by lightning. I've been hit myself, but only a glancing blow, but it just about knocked me totally unconscious. It was when I was a
Wow.
kid.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in all that. But there's a house at the base of the Blue Mountains, west of Sydney, that's been struck by Mike Williams, our mutual friend. Mike Williams and his girlfriend Rebecca Lang had been out to this property many times because they were primarily interested in Black Panther sightings in Australia. In fact, they wrote their definitive book on Australian big cats. I can show you the cover in a minute. But they would set up infrared cameras and motion cameras. The lady who owned the property went to all the trouble of building a great cage trap, baiting it with irresistible treats for this Black Panther. And she had movie cameras everywhere. They never got an proper shot of this thing. And the traps were sprung and without the creature being caught. This happens with the Yowie as well. But that property had been struck at least a dozen times by lightning. So I thought, yeah, well, the woman's still insisting that black cats are flesh and blood. But anyway, one of our dual witness events in the Blue Mountains, same mountain range, involved a couple called Jerry O'Connor and his wife Sue, and they had, as in the Stan Gordon episodes, they had a Bigfoot, a Yowie, coming up from this place called the Blue Labyrinth, canyon behind that place, coming up onto their property and whacking the meter box, the electricity meter box, banging it. Well, Stan Gordon said during those events in his area that the Bigfoot seemed fascinated by meter boxes on people's houses. He also mentioned the Bigfoots would approach houses where the women were having their monthly periods. Well, Sue O'Connor said that's what happened at their place too. So where was I with this? The O'Connors had either a ball lightning or a UFO, great big glowing sphere come down over the roof of their house on one occasion. A neighbour saw that. The O'Connors actually didn't see it. A neighbour saw it. But the O'Connors were in the house when their house was repeatedly struck by lightning. That blew out their TVs and phones and everything else. And on one occasion, a plasma ball came out of, I think it was out of the television or out of some electrical appliance, and flew across the room and then exploded. That was another case where repeated lightning strikes, ghostly activity. Yes, a ghost that appeared. Repeated Yowie visitations, and stones coming and hitting them, and without injuring them. Dean Harrison, who I mentioned earlier, he and his crew just covered that place with motion cameras, game cameras, and when they did that, there was nothing. As soon as one of the cameras was moved, this damn thing came in, went right out in the street to do it, came in and again looked through the window. The O'Connors used to see it looking through the bedroom window. Then it had banged the meter box. We covered that episode thoroughly in the 2006 book, The Yowie. Again, what is it with the lightning? And electrical effects are often mentioned in Bigfoot events and Yowie events, where car motors stall or motorbike motors or chainsaws just stop working, that sort of thing.
Yeah, back, when I corresponded with John Keel, I know like 1970, 71, I described to him a deputy sheriff that I had met who had multiple claims of UFO encounters. And then one day he was hit by lightning, and John Keel wanted to know the details.
Right.
And so he actually published the information in his anomaly newsletter that he used to put out at that time, and gave me credit for sending him the information. And he wanted to know, all the details about his UFO sightings. And it seemed that he'd been studying about lightning and experiences himself for quite some time. And then years later, I saw a copy of some comments that he made at a lecture where every place he would go to back in the day, he would stop at the police station and he'd ask him about unusual event. I mean, he'd ask him about people who had been struck recently by lightning because he felt there was unusual electrical activity going on in a lot of these active UFO locations.
Right.
And they would say, "How did you know about such?" He said, in fact, he claimed that one time he came there and they were bringing the body of a victim into the police station.
Oh my God!
Just struck.
Gee. Yeah.
So and since then, occasionally there's people that tell me unusual stories they've had, their experiences, and they've had 2 or 3 episodes with lightning, quite unusual. So
yeah,
it's interesting. You have all the oddball coincidences.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, or Keel was before all of us. Strange electrical activity does occur in our collection of poltergeist events. A lot of the episodes were preceded by stormy weather, electrical storms, particularly, many of them actually, but certainly the one in the Northern Territory that we investigated, and also the Mayana one in Western Australia, stormy weather, several others. Just trying to think now. There are numerous, and also by the time we got around to writing the Yowie File, we were really tuned into this stormy weather business. We had noticed it way back. Some of the European pioneers in the Tinderry Mountains south of Canberra here said that the wild man of the woods, as they used to call it then, the hairy ape man, would appear in stormy weather. So I noted that, Aboriginal people down at a village called Mogo on the south coast, that's there were numerous Yowie reports there. They're very interesting. They told me that, yes, these things appear in and around the village in stormy weather. And an Aboriginal man, quite an eminent guy, actually, who I talked to years ago, he told me Yowie stories from the extreme northwest of Australia, and how some friends of his had a hairy man come up and look into their tent during a lightning storm, and he said, yes, my people believe that these things are associated with stormy weather. So certainly in this new collection, we paid close heed, and there's the stormy weather connection, and also the number, you've probably noticed this yourself, the number of reports that occur under huge big power lines or close to them, or near microwave towers, things like that. So there's an electrical component, God knows what. I'm thinking of a guy, pastor, someone or other, who I interviewed down in Florida, and he'd been cutting wood with his chainsaw, and it just cut out, and he just had it serviced. He thought, what's going on? It won't work. He turned around, and there was a female Bigfoot, just walking quite close to him, behind him and across the track. That was up at Ocala, around Ocala. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so you got to talk to that witness yourself, too. Yeah, I remember in Keel's Strange Creatures from Time and Space in 1970, he dealt with a lot of, well, there was quite a number of cases, some of them going back centuries, like in England and such, of the connection between lightning and monsters, as he called them, but cryptids.
Yeah.
And I even remember one where it was something like this creature, whether it was like the black dog phenomena, large black
yes,
dogs,
the black dog and bug guy, yeah.
And it seemed like they love to attack churches, And
yeah.
there was something about a priest in a church, and there was lightning inside the church, and like there was a place on the floor that opened up, and this creature came out of it. I'm not sure there was I think maybe it was more like a big hog or pig or something instead of a dog. There were a lot of cases of the black dogs, and I think the priest had been struck by lightning and dead. There were a number of cases of that kind of horror. And I remember he wrote about some lake up in New York State where a number of times this creature had appeared during lightning activity, thunderstorms. And so, so I think there's a whole history for sure on this. Whatever it.
But, yeah, well, we're compiling a bit of a checklist, aren't we? You got the lightning, the electrical malfunctions, you got the element of the psychic, the naturally psychic people that tick, and then you got the hot spots, and then you got the fact that other strange cryptids are seen hand in glove with the Sasquatch on occasion. So there's sort of a checklist of a list. I don't know what it means, but
it's and it's quite challenging, quite confounding. What to do with it, what to make of it. It's I guess we just keep chronicling it and following it along. Sometimes it almost seems like you're dealing with the trickster element,
yes, exactly. Yeah. I think so too. Yeah, I think that's it. Well, it's been, someone remarked, I don't know whether it was a Native American person or someone else, that who said, these things know you're coming before you even leave home. But then,
someone told me recently in an email that they had talked to John Keel once, and Keel said something to him like, when you start looking into the weird, the weird starts looking back at you, or something like that.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah, certainly for some people that seems to have been true. But yeah. Anyway, well, I know we've had quite a interesting conversation here for the last hour, and I don't want to wear you out this but
no, it's great, Brent. Always happy to chat. As my long-suffering friends and relations know, it's difficult to shut me up once I get going. But yeah, it's a delightful talking to you. We must do this more often. I mean, I can't believe it was 6 years since we chatted last.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was that long, but the record shows that's that's the case.
Yeah.
I go back and to the computer, and there it was. So
amazing. Yeah.
But let me go ahead and sign out on the recording. Maybe just talk with you just a little bit,
Sure.
just you and me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, just touch base with a few more things. But thank you, Tony, for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. It's been very, very fascinating, and I, would love to hear more. So I'm going to have to get some of your books. But anyway, on to the next, as they say on the Ghost Hunters show here in America.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Onwards and upwards.
onwards and upwards. Yeah.